Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the collapse of the SNP and Scottish Greens alliance, and in particular how SNP leader and Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf, who I thought made a decent start to his term, seems to be defaulting to a lot of the same tactics the Conservatives are using to defend themselves in similar situations. It hasn't worked for the Tories. I don't think it's going to work for the SNP. So when Yousaf first became leader of the SNP, there were serious fault lines in the party. As with any party capable of forming a government, it has to essentially be a broad church representing a common purpose. But lots of disagreements about how to deliver that common purpose. I mean, that's the same. It's the SNP, Labour, the Conservatives, it's all the same. You have to give the impression that you're all cohesive, you're all on the same page, you're all thinking the same thing. You're not. You're quite diverse. Nicola Sturgeon was a very effective political leader, so she was able to keep her party looking like a cohesive force for years. Obviously, it helps that she was really good at winning elections. When she stepped down, it looks like whoever replaced her would face a lot of internal battles. But to be fair to Yousaf, he was calm, he held his party together. There were hurdles to jump and he jumped them. One of his leadership challengers left the party. She's now an Alba MSP. That seems to have been the most notable fallout. But over the past half a year, I see a lot of Yousaf's response to a decline in the polls that mirrors what the Conservatives are doing. And I sort of get, if you're facing difficulty, I mean, the situation is really this. The SNP have been in government a long time. The Conservatives have been in government in Westminster a long time. After a while, people are going to start to think, oh, maybe there's an alternative here. You're going to be under pressure. And if you're going to think to yourself, oh, what do we do about this? This is a new situation for us. What are we going to do? And you're looking around for some inspiration. Don't look at what the Conservatives are doing. Have you seen what their poll rating is? It hasn't worked for Sunak. How is it going to work for Yousaf? Apart from anything else, there are some Scottish news outlets that back the SNP, but the media is still largely Tory wherever you go. And if the media can't cover for the Tories, why would they do the same for the SNP? Like, take the latest fallout. The Scottish Greens and the SNP, that formal alliance they have, the Butte Agreement, has ended. Essentially over the decision to scrap one of the pledges which formed that alliance. The specific pledge was one of cutting carbon emissions by 75% by 2030. They're also dropping the annual targets on carbon emission reductions as well. Now, their carbon reduction aim is now going to take place by 2045. There may or may not be a good reason for it. The reason cited was a lack of progress made by the UK government. And you go, okay, right. Only, hang on a minute, I seem to remember that the SNP, whenever Labour, who are not even in government anywhere, well, they are in Wales, but in terms of national government, whenever, and remember in Wales, this issue is not devolved to them anyway, whenever Labour have had to adjust their policies to take account of the economic reality created by the Tories, the SNP would say, oh, you're just making excuses. So I don't think, I mean, I've seen a report that the SNP are blaming the Westminster government for this. I mean, that can't be right because that would be double standards, isn't it? But anyway, whatever the reason, good or bad, it was inevitably going to cause a rift with the Scottish Greens. But regardless of whether SNP ministers think that their decision is the right one or not, or that it had to be made now, that the timing had to be now, in Westminster election year, the way Yousaf has handled it, I think, is objectively really bad. First of all, Yousaf has over the past week or so, tried to keep the Scottish Greens on side. Now, when he lost confidence that he could do so, he announced today the ending of the Butte Agreement with them. Now, everyone knows that he's done this before the Scottish Greens do it themselves, because they were still discussing things internally. They hadn't actually made a definite decision, but I guess there was a strong feeling it was going that way. So basically, Yousaf has scrapped the agreement so that he can say it was his decision. No, you're not leaving me, I'm leaving you. But it just makes him look petty. But then you think, so, okay, not everyone's paying close attention. How's it going to look to people who take Yousaf at face value that his party no longer needs the agreement. Because what he said at the press conference, he said he was ending the agreement because it had served its purpose. What an insane way to phrase it. I've had my use out of you. I'm now discarding you like a used tissue. How appalling. And it got worse. The reason this alliance was formed in the first place was because the SNP did not quite achieve a majority in the last Holyrood elections. So it was a way of providing a stable government, a bit like the Westminster coalition of 2010 to 2015. So what happens now that the agreement which allowed for that stability is gone? Well, Yousaf says he's just going to get agreements with opposition parties. Oh, I've done this in the past, we'll just do it again. It's like, okay, yeah, fine. I mean, inevitably, as a minority government, that's how you achieve things. But how's he going to do that with the way he's handled it? Apparently, by telling opposition parties to stop sniping from the sidelines and work with him. That's what he said. And I'm thinking, where have I heard that before? Oh, I remember. Theresa May said it a lot while she was trying to get her withdrawal agreement through after she pissed away her majority. In fact, it's even a line that Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak have used against opposition parties, including the SNP, even with their large majority. Oh, it's easy for you to just snipe from the sidelines. You should do as we say. Yousaf's using the same line. What? How's that going to work? He's now made it harder for the Scottish Greens to support him, even on issues they might naturally have supported him on if they had cancelled the agreement. Because now, if the Greens support the SNP government, they're going to look like mugs, aren't they? They've had their pledges cancelled and they've had their alliance dissolved. It wasn't their decision. They were still talking about it, right? The SNP have binned them. What on earth would it look like to Green voters if their party carries on supporting the SNP after that? If Yousaf is basically saying, you're going to support me, stop sniping from the sidelines, stop snivelling and you vote for me, right? What's he going to look like if they actually do that? And the SNP have been pursuing Tory-style culture wars against both the Conservatives and Labour. So it's hard to see how he gets any support there. He's not going to get anything there, is he? You know, they've tried to stoke division over Gaza for Labour. This week, Yousaf got his fingers burned trying to play silly buggers over the Post Office Horizon scandal. He said the government should get on with sorting the issue out, forgetting that he is the government. Like, these matters are devolved in Scotland. So actually, the response to the scandal in Scotland has nothing to do with Westminster. Needless to say, he was community noted to death on Twitter about it, with another one because he'd also called it the Royal Mail Horizon scandal. It's got nothing to do with the Royal Mail, it's Post Office. Members of the public often aren't aware of the difference because they used to be joined at the hip, but they're not anymore. But I mean, surely unforgivable for an actual head of government who's supposed to be addressing the consequences himself. I mean, there's a sense in which this sort of political gaming is inevitable. When the public don't always know which government is responsible for which policy areas, you try to gain public opinion, right? That's just politics, it's inevitable. But when you play this game with something really big, you're going to get called out. And when you do get called out, the public have to draw one of two conclusions. Either you're playing politics, in which case you're not a good faith actor, or you don't even know what powers you have, in which case you're not competent. And I cannot emphasise enough that what the SNP and Yousaf are doing here is effectively what the Tories are trying. They're panicking about falling poll ratings. They've been in power for a while. Yeah, the public are naturally thinking about, oh, maybe there's an alternative. And so they push the emotive issues, the emotional side of politics, in order to try and firm up tribal loyalties. You know, because there are some people who have blind tribal loyalties and they will behave. You give them a news story, and if you take out the names of the politicians and the party and ask them what they think about it, and they'll think a particular way about it because it's entirely neutral. Now tell them that it's about a party that they oppose, and they go, oh yeah, absolutely, absolute scum. And now tell them it's a party they support. It's like, oh, well, there's probably a good reason for it. But most voters aren't that tribal. And now Yousaf has engineered a situation where he may now struggle for support in Holyrood. It would have been better letting the Greens dissolve the agreement if that's what they would have decided to do. He could then have claimed, look, sorry, we had no choice. We were forced into this situation. He could have carried on blaming the Tories, but say he still wants to work with the Greens on policies he can deliver on. He understands why they've dissolved the agreement. He could have been diplomatic, is what I'm basically saying. there would have been, that would have been way better than sticking two fingers up them. Oh, I never wanted you anyway. Go away. Like, that's mad. And then telling all opposition parties to support him and all carry on calling them names. The Scottish Conservatives are planning on calling a confidence vote. Now, Yousaf has described this as playing political games. Actually, indeed it is. But so is cancelling an agreement you tried to rescue just because you didn't want the other side doing it first. I'm not sure about the wisdom of calling a confidence vote from the Conservative point of view. I'm assuming they expect Yousaf to win it anyway. And I suppose he should do. But if he fails the vote, what then? It's not like there's an alternative who would command confidence. Do the Tories really want to try and force an early election? They'd be hammered. The Scottish Tories stand a better chance in the Holyrood elections once they're in opposition in Westminster. Like right now, there's a lot of anti-Tory protest voting would be in play even in Scottish elections. Or are they doing it purely to put pressure on the Greens? Because as a pro-independence party, you'd still expect them to support Yousaf as First Minister, even though they're going to have to be seen as firmer when it comes to other votes. But what if Yousaf's behaviour makes it difficult for even the Greens to support him? I mean, he doesn't need much support. He only needs a couple of them to vote for him and he'll survive. But what if he doesn't get that? You know, the way he's dealt with it, he's putting that at risk. You know, I've said it of Sunak and I'll say it of Yousaf. When your party's been in power for a while, people are bound to start thinking that maybe shaking things up with a party with lots of fresh ideas is worth considering. The response is to make sure you're going out of your way to address voters' concerns, point out the successful elements of your record, at least the SNP have got a record, what the Tories got, and explain your plans to improve the aspects of life that are important to your voters. Make yourself look like the party of fresh ideas. You've just had a new leader. You should be able to do that. That's the whole point of changing leader midstream, to make out that you're shaking things up yourself so the voters don't need to do it for you. The solution is not to stoke political divisions and push culture wars, especially when you don't even have the support of the media in doing so. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.